Hey all you cool cats and kittens. Today we're going to start Unit 10. We're going to be looking at Learning Target 1. The learning target is what causes the First World War and why does it have popular support. We're really going to focus on really three main topics on this lecture. The first one being the alliance structure that is created and put in place. The second one being the idea of nationalism and how that plays a role in creating World War I, and then lastly the idea of militarism. So three real key topics of the alliance structure, nationalism, and militarism that is going to help to cause World War I. So starting out, we want to talk about that alliance structure. Remember that Europe is consistently kind of worried about maintaining a balance of power, and after 1871, when Germany unites and creates their nation, they consistently become a larger and more dominant force in Europe. Now, Bismarck carefully was working at making sure to keep France isolated, because prior to 1871, France is the big power player in Europe throughout most of our study of history. So he consistently wants to work to keep them isolated. Establishes a agreement between Germany, which is now the German Empire, and Russia, which is a non-aggression pact, which it effectively creates a bit of an alliance between those two nations. In 1890, however, Bismarck is going to be sacked. He gets fired by the new Kaiser, Kaiser Wilhelm II, who's going to come into power and take over from his dad. And the whole idea here is that he wants to have more international control, that Bismarck has been a leading force, and that the only way that he's really going to wrest control from that is by taking control himself. So he fires Bismarck and decides not to re-sign the pact with Russia. This instantly creates a scenario where France then begins a process of making negotiations and treaties and discussions with Russia, and creates essentially the first part of the alliance structure, which is the dual alliance, which is going to be between France and Russia. Germany is going to react to that. They will create an alliance structure that's going to be a pact between them and Austria, Hungary, and Italy, which will then create our two different alliance structures. Germany still wants to make sure that that England, or Great Britain, the United Kingdom, does not become part of any of these power struggles. They want to keep Great Britain completely out of this, but they also want to start sort of wielding their political might, and they kind of start getting involved politically overseas, specifically in two important crises, the first and the second Moroccan crises. Now, Morocco had been a territory that had been controlled it's the northwest corner of Africa, had been controlled by France. In 1906, 1907, the Kaiser decides that he believes that he goes and on a diplomatic mission, meets with the Sultan of Morocco, and through politics and whatnot, he kind of asserts the claim that Morocco should be an independent nation and that they should be able to create trade agreements with Great Britain on their own without influence from France, meaning that Morocco should be open. This creates a political crisis. It's solved fairly easily in a diplomatic setting where they bring most of those nations together, all these European nations together, to decide, so how are we going to leave Morocco open? And everybody does not side with Great Britain. In fact, only one nation actually votes to side with Germany, And this is like a political disaster for Kaiser Wilhelm II, because it looks like he gets a little bit of mud on his face. He kind of has to leave the scenario a bit in disgrace. And it starts to establish a thawing of relations with Great Britain, the United Kingdom, and France. In 1911, they have the second Moroccan crisis, where the Kaiser actually sends a warship into the Moroccan waters to support a revolution that's kind of taking place in there. And this again brings Great Britain closer and closer into an agreement with France, because Great Britain is going to view Germany as even more of a threat to the international peace that's kind of unraveling as things are progressing in Africa. So because Germany is using a warship, and they're consistently trying to build a navy that should be able to compete with Great Britain, which puts fear into the eyes of Great Britain, which then brings them closer to France, which then forces them to file an alliance with France secretly, creating a triple alliance with France. So now all these things are going to start to create this we have now the triple alliance, which is going to be with Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy, and then you will have the triple entente, which is now going to include Great Britain, France, and Russia. And all these places have signed on to this alliance structure with these great European powers, effectively pitting 3 against 3. So now, in Europe during this time, we have 2 distinct moods, and that's where we'll start talking about. So here's our alliance structure. Now we look at sort of the ideals of militarism, and in Europe, through industrialization, as the industrialization process is kind of being built, the technology and that is being created is starting to explode. So think about early 1900s, and vehicles are being created. We have cars that are being made, motorcycles. People are starting to learn how to make flying machines. Right? They're making airplanes. We're on a military level. They're making better and more powerful machine guns, bigger and longer range missiles, and things that can send bombs at longer distances. So Germany is really working to try and create a navy that's going to be on par with Great Britain. And so this heightened sense of using industrialization to continue to build up stronger and stronger militaries, which then increases the amount of worry and anxiety among these nations and these people, that they create larger and larger armies, so we have more people actually becoming a part of these different militaries. And we have like universal conscription, meaning that everybody is going to be conscripted into the military at some point in their life in countries like France, Germany, Italy, Austria-Hungary, Russia. And all these things are starting to take place that's going to heighten this sense of militarism and this ideal of a strong and powerful military makes a strong and powerful country. So we created an alliance structure. Now it's this heightened sense of the need to create these large and more powerful armies. And throw into that, then we get the idea of nationalism. Now, nationalism is becoming more and more prevalent in all these nations. They're using nationalism and pride in country to help support all kinds of different foreign crises outside of their actual country. It's a way for politicians to continually push the idea of being united as a nation and allowing them to force the rest of the citizens, the rest of the population within their nations to overlook some of the maybe problems within their country. And specifically, we think like, the Great Britain, or not Great Britain, but Germany, which is a really good example of this, where they are having a heightened sense of nationality or nationalism in a newfound nation. Like, this is something that they're trying to continue to unite everyone under the idea of being German. And so by consistently trying to tout that as the main thought of their nation, right, then this helps to continue to solidify them as a new nation. Because remember, 1871, we're looking at only 40 years or so or 48 years by the time, 44 years by the time, 43 years by the time Germany actually starts World War I, or not Germany starts it, but as World War I starts. So this is an important concept. On top of that, we also are going to have the Balkan Peninsula. Is going to be considered, it's called in a variety of different ways. It's called either the tinderbox of Europe, or it's called the powder keg of Europe. The idea being that there is so much strife within this territory, the Balkan Peninsula, that it is ripe for a violent insurrection, or that all it's going to take is one tiny little spark and everything's going to explode. And nationalism plays a key role in this. Now, for centuries, this territory had been dominated by the Ottoman Empire. Now, the Ottoman Empire is becoming more and more weak, and their influence becomes less and less, and all of a sudden, these different groups of people that had been for centuries under the control of the Ottoman Empire start to form their own nations and a new heightened sense of nationalism. And so now we end up with the independent state of Serbia. There's going to be wars between Serbia and Bulgaria, with Romania involved. This is Albania, Macedonia. All of these different new nations are starting to become more and more nationalistic and and interested in their own nationalistic gains and their own nationalistic goals. At the same time that this is taking place, we have Austria-Hungary, which is has territory within the Balkan Peninsula that can be claimed or not claimed by a variety of different nationalities, and Austria-Hungary is continuing to try and tamp down some of those nationalistic tendencies and continue to make sure that they can control their own areas. This is not just unique to Austria, it's also going to be an issue with Russia, as Russia is going to support various nationalities within that Balkan Peninsula in their quest for freedom, and they're going to hope to suppress some of those nationalistic tendencies in some of those other areas. So understand that by, when we look at that nationalism is key for our European nations in creating a stronger nation, but it's also creating a scenario in the Balkan Peninsula specifically where we're looking at an opportunity for huge problems in the very near future. So we'll be coming back, probably lecturing on the actual spark that's going to create create our World War I, looking at the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand in another lecture. So remember, Carol Baskin definitely killed her husband. I think lathered him up in some kind of sardine oil and definitely fed him to her tigers. It's guaranteed. But remember, most importantly, that we have three different concepts for this topic. We want to remember that there are alliance structure that's been put in place, that we have a key sense of militarism throughout all of Europe, and that lastly, we also have nationalism is playing a key role in creating a scenario and a situation where World War I is going to happen.